So it is 6:04. Call this meeting to order. Bloomington Commission on Sustainability. And if we could start with a roll call. I'm going to both try to run the meeting and take notes and wait for Najla at the same time. So it should be interesting. So if we can just go around, say your name and say that you're here. And since I see you first, Joseph, if you can start.
Yes, Joseph Winnie, a present member.
David Maynard, present.
Emma Ferguson, present.
Matt Flaherty, present.
Christy Anderson, present. Oh. And Christy Anderson, present.
Alicia Hardy, present.
Najla Routstong, present.
Okay, I think that's everyone. And then Najla, would it be fine if you acted as chair for this meeting until we have elections next month?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Do you have the agenda?
Let me just pull
Okay.
it up here.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so thanks to Lauren for starting the meeting and doing the roll call. First up, we have approval of the agenda. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve the agenda?
Move we approve the agenda.
Second.
That's approved. And, or do we have to do a roll call vote on that?
Oh, we don't have to if you're relying on unanimous consent to adopt it, but in that case, we don't really need a motion in a second either. You could say something like, if there are no objections to the agenda or amendments,
Yeah.
you know, the agenda is approved, but if we move in second, it's probably best to take a vote at that point.
Does anyone have any objections to approving the agenda? Okay, then that is approved. And moving on to the next item, approval of the minutes of last month's meeting. Would anyone like to move to make that motion?
Move we approve last month's minutes.
Second.
Any objections? That is approved. Next is public comment. Is there anyone here from the public? I see Don, it looks like, is here. I don't know if is anyone else here from the public besides Don? Okay, so Don, would you like to report from the Environmental Commission?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, really quickly, I want to go through quickly. The EC last Sunday held a Zoom meeting with the Bloomington neighborhood and homeowners associations to inform them and encourage them to support and participate in the EC's wildlife corridor, which is basically a biodiversity effort project. This project will be receiving support from MC Iris as well as the Parks Department, and we're hoping that we will be able to assist particularly low-income neighborhoods largely along the Jackson Creek watershed or corridor, which is basically the west side of town, where there are a higher percentage of people with modest means. So the idea will be to get support for replacement plants and assistance in, say, removing invasive plants. And we're also encouraging the other neighborhoods around the city to participate as well. Apparently, well, we had, it appears to have had a very good turnout from the different associations. So as far as I know, we're pretty much off and running on that. Related to that, Parks and MC Iris are expanding into, hopefully last week, we had to bail on the idea or effort in the, oh, what the heck, I'm trying to think of the little wildlife, 30 some acre patch of forest there immediately south of the mall, Latimer Woods. And so this Thursday, or sorry, Friday, we're hoping, again, we're going to be playing problems potentially with weather on Friday, but so the MC Iris and Parks would encourage any of you that are interested to participate with us in these wrangles of trying to remove invasive plants from what in essence are our wildlife corridors that are in the ones we're focusing on right now are city-owned properties, but occasionally we are expanding out into county as well as private efforts. So that's pretty much it. Just one quick note. Today I read an interesting article related to energy efficiency, and that the average home in the United Kingdom loses around 200 pounds, which would be about 280 US dollars in lost energy because of inefficient, and this is in new construction. And particularly the issue is that the standards for new construction need to be raised. And this amount ultimately works out to something like 290 million pounds out of the UK economy. So as far as the both your commission and mine, the concerns for climate change and affordable housing, et cetera, this is something that probably is an issue. It's definitely an issue here in the United States as well. So that's it. Okay.
Okay,
You're muted.
yes, thank you. Okay, thanks for that report, Don. And we also have coming up later on. Oh, I guess I'll give the report from acting chair. We have coming up later on in the agenda under new business to discuss the possible the recommendation to possibly merge BCOs with the Environmental Commission, and we'll discuss that under new business as well. Thanks, and thanks for that report,
Okay.
John. Yeah, so besides that, I also want to draw everyone's attention to the Just Transition Town Hall event that we have coming up next month, March 16th. We have created, Lauren was kind enough to, I don't know if she created all the marketing materials herself or others, but to facilitate with that creation, we are marketing that event. So, and we'll be doing more of that. It's on March 16th, so we'll be doing probably most of that near the end of this month. So I'll probably be sending an email to everyone on BCause in a couple months, you know, just asking you to help promote the event to anyone you know or any groups. who may like to attend that. And I don't have anything else to report. Report from staff liaison. Lauren, you're up.
Hi, everyone. First, I just wanted to say hello to Emma and David, who are our new members of the commission. It's our first official meeting, although I've heard that David, you were apparently on last time and nobody knew. So welcome to our commission. If you have any questions about BCOS, feel free to reach out to me. We have a couple of items later in the agenda. One will be a vote on a resolution to amend the bylaws, which are basically the founding documents of the commission in a way and how we operate. So one of the changes will be to change the annual elections to next month. And we have 4 elected positions that we will be filling if that passes later in the meeting. And then another change is to just make sure that the definition of quorum is clear for anyone that's present. So that will be the hopefully final reading of those changes, and then we'll vote on that later. In terms of other things that the commission's working on, I think we'll speak a little bit more about the town hall event later in the agenda. And there's also some other efforts going on with some working groups. So we can work to get you connected with whichever of those things that you're interested in. And then the other things that I wanted to talk about, I just forwarded in press release. It's from our urban forester about community engagement around tree planting that will be going on next month. As part of the bicentennial bond project, there will be 300 new trees planted this next year in different places that have been identified as priority planting areas. And so Aaron Hatch, the urban forester, is holding community engagement sessions on that at 2 points in February, on February 11th and February 21st. So in the press release that I just forwarded to you all, there's a meeting link if you're interested in joining any of those. And then the other piece that I wanted to mention was that there was some discussion about BCOS engagement on climate action plan tracking and engagement. And I think that there's a good possibility that I'd like some feedback on a climate action dashboard and engagement tool that we'll be launching in the first half of this year. So as that starts happening and being built in February and March, I'd like to bring it to next month's meeting and talk to you all about what that looks like and get your feedback on making it helpful for the public, as well as continuing to engage all of you in any potential climate action committee meetings with council moving forward. So, sorry, there's someone in the waiting room. And then otherwise, I would say that my only other thing to report is that the Sustainable Bloomington page, so the page that I manage on the website, is hosting information about a variety of different Earth Day events that will be happening in April. So there's a combination of live and virtual events with pre-registration. Some are things like tree plantings, weed wrangles, green stormwater featured tours. We're going to have some hopefully other like cleanup events happening in April, and videos submitted by organizations that will play over the course of the day and then be available to folks that aren't available on Friday the 22nd. So the website for that is the sustainability website and then /Earth Day. And so that will continue to be updated and provide an opportunity for people to get engaged in things and volunteer efforts throughout the month of April. So that's a joint effort between different city of Bloomington departments, as well as Canopy Bloomington, Monroe County Parks and Recreation, and Sycamore Land Trust. So I think that's most of what I have to report. Later in the agenda, like Najla mentioned, if we have some time, I'd like to discuss the organizational assessment for commissions, but we'll see how long the meeting's running with the other items. So.
Thanks, Lauren. And I just also was thinking it would be nice under new business if we had just a few moments for each of our new members to just briefly introduce themselves to the
Right.
commission. That might be nice. So I'll give you guys a heads up on that. And okay, moving on to report from Council ex officio, Matt Flaherty.
Thank you, Angela. Yeah, so for our new members too, I'm Matt Flaherty. I'm an at-large representative on the Bloomington City Council, and I'm the council's ex officio seat on BCOS. I also chair the Climate Action Resilience Committee of the council, which when we had our meeting last week was unclear whether that committee would continue to exist. The council was reorganizing how we hear some legislation and other things, and some committees we had been using in the past were eliminated, others were retained or created, and Climate Action Resilience Committee was one that was ultimately retained as part of that change. So just an update on folks there. I know a number of commissioners had engaged with that process. As noted in the agenda, we are going to have a meeting on February 22nd at 6 p.m. The committee is made up of myself and council members Isabel Piedmont Smith, Councilmember Smith, and Councilmember Rallo. We are probably going to have something like quarterly meetings with Lauren this year to share updates on progress from the climate action plan. And I would, to use the meeting, I suppose, how committee members would like to. I mentioned last month that personally, I view both the city's climate action team, which is made up of department heads and Lauren and some other folks. I see those meetings and the committee meetings we have throughout the year as an important way to kind of check in on the council's progress as well, on its priorities and the legislative components of the Sustainability Action Plan and the Climate Action Plan. So I'm hoping that our February meeting, we can have a bit of a discussion about potential items to try to tackle this year in 2022, as well as the overall flow of work for the legislative components of those plans over the next 7 or so years of the kind of implementation timeframe. For the CAP, would definitely welcome BCOS members to attend if they are interested. The notice, I don't think, has gone out yet or been posted, but I confirmed with council staff earlier this week that date and time. So again, Tuesday, February 22nd at 6 p.m. So notice will go out soon if it hasn't already, and there will be a link on the council's webpage for the agenda and Zoom meeting information. So that's at bloomington.in.gov/council, that meeting calendar. I think it's worth the commission considering having somebody designated to potentially attend those meetings if that's of interest to folks to continue to build the network and make sure we're keeping good communication lines among different bodies working on the climate action plan, since BCOS has charged with helping with implementation in the same way that the Climate Action and Resilience Committee of the Council is. A couple other updates. One is that I host monthly constituent meetings, and everybody is welcome to join those, of course. Anyone in the city or even outside the city is welcome to join those. And those are on the third Monday of the month at 5:30 p.m. Again, a link for those is found on the council's calendar. So that's February 21st this month at 5:30 p.m. Two other notes, as already been mentioned and is on the agenda. Council heard a report last week from the Novak consulting group that had been commissioned to do an organizational assessment of the city's boards and commission structure. There are kind of, it's a, I don't know, 30 or 40 page report, and there's about 9 high level recommendations. And one of those recommendations, in fact, the first one in the report, is to combine the Commission on Sustainability and the Environmental Commission. And this link I just dropped in the chat is the news release about that, which also contains a link to the report itself that you can read. There's about 4 paragraphs on the recommendation with regard to BCOS and the Environmental Commission. So it sounds like we'll discuss that later in the meeting today. And then finally, in terms of ongoing work before the council with sustainability implications or relevance, we don't have a meeting this week, and next week we'll be back at a regular session. and we will be hearing, considering a resolution on a proposed tax abatement for Catalent for a substantial expansion in jobs and manufacturing capacity for them down near their site off of Rogers and kind of near Switchyard Park. So that was heard by the Bloomington Economic Development Commission on January 31st and recommended for the abatement schedule brought by staff for that project. I believe it's $30 million abatement over 20 years, a combination of real estate and business personal property tax. We don't actually have the materials for that yet on the council. We'll receive those, I think, Friday this week in our packet. So you could consult the council's meeting packet if you're interested in reading more about that, or you could watch the most recent Economic Development Commission meeting, which is available on CATS TV, like many of our public meetings are. And I dropped a link to a search for that as well in the chat. It's a 52-minute meeting from end of last month. I mentioned that just because there's, I mean, that's a large abatement and potentially a very large expansion of Catalent's employment here in Bloomington, which has significant impacts on social, economic, and environmental sustainability. So I thought commissioners may be interested. Plan to discuss that some in my constituent meeting this month, and really anything else that residents want to tackle. So I think that's it for updates from me, and happy to answer any questions if folks have them about any of those things.
Thanks for that update. I'm just pulling up the, having a little trouble pulling up the agenda again. Can someone help me out? What's next on the agenda?
The next thing, Colin had sent commission members some guidance on the bipartisan infrastructure bill. I wasn't sure if you wanted to discuss that, Colin. If not, we can skip to the next thing.
Can you hear me okay? Great.
Yeah.
I shared this because I thought it was significant. You know, apparently, I'll just go ahead and share my thing really quick if that's all right. Could you enable?
Yes, just a second.
Okay.
You should be able to now.
Okay. Let's see. Oh, I think you enable phone. Right. Could you enable the other Colin Murphy? Sorry about that. I'll just get right into it though while Lauren's doing. So I don't really have time to kind of dig into this today, and I think there needs to be a little bit more legwork done to kind of figure out, okay, to what extent does this apply to I guess this commission and to Bloomington. But as I think most of us are probably aware, the Congress passed historic investment in infrastructure last year, the so-called Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. The White House has released a guidebook for local, state, and tribal governments and regional governments as well to sort of advise them on, I guess, how to process what's in this law, maybe the sort of funding opportunities. Just as a really quick overview, to give you a sense of the historic size of it, the United States is about to see, I guess, the largest ever investments in broadband internet, rail and clean energy, water, and so forth, which I think is directly relevant to this commission and certainly to the city of Bloomington government. And that's because, of course, in my opinion at least, to build a truly sustainable society, we need robust, well-funded, and quality public infrastructure, right? And so I'm personally very excited by this, though I think the climate provisions could have been beefed up, of course. So this is just to introduce it to you all, to put it on your radar. I think, you know, if, you know, a couple commissioners want to kind of peel off and maybe dig deeper into this particular guidebook, that could be really, and then sort of digest it for us, that could be interesting. Or we could sort of just agendize this for a more deliberate in-depth discussion, yeah, for the commission to take up, or if we merge with Environmental Commission, for that commission to take up eventually. So I guess I'll open the floor to, any comments or questions folks have any. Does
Could you
this
drop
excite
the link
you?
Could you link to that maybe into the chat?
Sure.
So we could look at it later.
Yeah, happy to do that. 1 second.
Want to have any questions or comments on that topic? In your opinion, Colin, what are the important timelines and considerations? What, in your opinion, like what did you already have a chance to look through it?
No, not at all,
Okay.
actually. So this was really
Okay.
just putting it out there.
Getting it on
And I'm
our
not sure-
radar. Mhm.
Yeah, getting on your radar, and I'm not sure I'll have the capacity to do that sort of deep dive, though I always say that, and then I kind of make it happen anyway by procrastinating on graduate school work. So, who knows? Maybe I will. But yeah, if anyone else is interested, I think this would be kind of a cool side project potentially, and not that big of a lift, frankly.
Okay, thank you for that.
Angela,
Yes.
I just wanted to mention, well, first say thanks, Colin, for sending that around. And I did spend a little time going through it. And in particular, I just wanted to plug that the data file that's downloadable is quite useful. It's got all the programs separated out by category. And there's a bunch around resilience, around electric vehicles, public transportation, the agency providing it, award amount, the eligible recipients, and timelines and all that. So it's just a really great searchable and categorizable Excel document. So it's maybe 380 rows or something like that. So the number of programs and opportunities, not all of which are new, some of these are existing, but getting additional funding, that sort of thing. So I haven't spent much time in it yet, but it is enormous in scope and really exciting in a lot of ways. So I'm hoping to spend some more time in it myself. Just if folks are interested, I wanted to say that guidebook I found particularly useful so far. The data file for the guidebook.
Thank you, Councilmember Flaherty, for adding that. Any other comments or questions on this topic? Okay, thanks, Colin, for getting that on our radar. I'm definitely looking forward to doing a deeper dive. Next on the agenda is resolutions for third reading. Resolution 2201, amendment of BCOS bylaws, highlighted in packet.
I can share that if it's helpful.
Yeah, that would be great on your screen.
Can you see it?
Yeah, are we voting on, what does that mean, third reading? Does that mean we're voting on?
Voting to accept the changes, and that this reflects last month's conversation, reflecting that next month will be the monthly meeting to annual selection of officers. And that will also give an opportunity for the commission to discuss the 2022 sustainability assessment, and can discuss in more detail at next month's meeting about what that will look like. We had a conversation briefly about that in December, and a change to clarify what quorum. Majority of the currently filled seats on the commission constitute a quorum for the purpose of conducting official business. And that reflects some challenges in defining quorum when seats were vacant, which happens from time to time. And then the only other changes down here about resolutions, at least 2/3 of members from currently filled seats being present and voting for the adoption of a resolution. So if there is any discussion, that should happen now, and I will scroll back to wherever anyone wants to talk about. Joseph, I think your hand's up.
Indeed, thank you. I did want to ask if there was a consideration for making the same change in language on vacant seats or filled seats rather for, sorry, give me a second, Article 5 for making amendments to bylaws, which also calls for a 2/3 majority without a specification of how the majority is determined. Should be the very, very last paragraph.
I
Was
think
that
everyone can see that. Yeah, amendment right here.
Yeah, was that intentionally omitted in order to be conservative with the amendment of the bylaws, or should that also be included?
I think that's open to discussion. Does anyone have comments about whether to include that as an amendment to the amendment?
What are your thoughts on it, Joseph, since you raised the topic?
Yeah, personally, it did seem to be in line with the intent of the other changes in order to improve and flexibility in cases of seat vacancies. If there's a need to make amendments to bylaws when there's fewer than full commission. But I also acknowledge that that's the one that's probably the most sensitive to needing protection from inappropriate use of changes to bylaws if there is a small majority that's able to make changes. So I would say I have a leaning towards it being consistent with the other language, but wouldn't be opposed to preserving in its current state, kind of based on collective commissioner or parliamentarian perspective.
I'm
Matt?
inclined, yeah, thank you. I'm inclined to change it with an amendment to the amendment, although it raises the question of whether we can properly vote on and pass this resolution tonight. I think we have 9 out of 14 members present, which is just shy of a 2/3 majority, which I think was the same numbers we had last month. So I'm actually not sure we can amend the bylaws. But for that reason, I think this demonstrates why it's a problem, and why maybe Article 5 should be clarified to be in line with the changes.
Yeah, I thought we were going to define it so that unfilled seats don't count. So we won't have this problem. We won't have that problem tonight, right?
Well, to change it, to put a change in place, we need to follow the old rules. But we are trying to address that problem. So going forward, once the new bylaws are approved, we will be able to have that flexibility. But until that's the case, I think technically we are not able to vote on this. Does anyone else? I don't know. Does anyone disagree?
I have a potential idea. I spoke with Michaela Bonney, who's the director of Sustain IU, a couple of weeks ago about this, because technically Sustain IU has a seat on this commission. And she expressed that I think just given some changes within the IU system and that they're technically part of the university / government body, et cetera, they're interested in having that seat removed, which I don't know what that process entails, but that could potentially mean that our denominator would be 13 as opposed to 14. In which case we might have quorum. So that was I think their intent is not to fill it, and that seat should perhaps not exist anymore, but I don't know if I'm the appropriate person to communicate that on her behalf, I guess.
I'll just note that it'll take a change of city code to change how many members, which is fine. We can draft a very simple cleanup ordinance and bring that. I think potential changes to the boards and commission structure via city ordinance or via change to city code. I was sort of assuming we would tackle as a broader board and commission cleanup based on whatever recommendations we decide to implement from the report. But that's not to say that that's not one option for addressing this.
So needless to say, we won't be voting on it tonight. Does anyone have any other comments thoughts or discussions to share on which way you would prefer this to be worded?
I guess just in terms of like next steps, just because I would hate for us to like continue to have this happen every month until we kind of figure this out. So would the appropriate next step be to like somehow confirm, probably in a way that's not like hearsay, or like that Sustain IU wants to maybe lose its seat and then therefore proceed with this changing of the code, or is there another easier route?
I think we have two different but related problems. I have talked to Michaela about that, and that's a sort of longer term, I think, structural change to the commission, which I think to Matt's point would be potentially addressed if there was follow up on the merger. I think there's also, I talked to city clerk staff intention to interview for our vacant seats. I did not hear from some of the people that are not present at this meeting that they would not be able to attend. So I think it's okay if we don't vote, but I do think clarity about whether to change this language and then intending to hold the elections next meeting would be important, because it's difficult to function without people in the executive position. So
Lauren, we could still vote on, Jared has stepped down. I mean, so we need to, fill leadership positions. And I think we could do that appropriately in March, even in the absence of a 2/3 majority.
Yeah.
So we could fill officer positions. I think if we maybe just very strongly emphasize to all members before the March meeting that we really need you here so that we can change the bylaws. And hopefully, the interview committee, which I think is Councilmembers Rallo, Piedmont Smith, and Sandberg, will have filled any council vacancies by that point. It's a more difficult process for the council because we have to hold public meetings to simply decide who to interview and then public meetings to interview and so on. So it's just the sequence takes longer, which is why March is a better time for officer elections, given that constraint. We could make the appeal to Michaela to join next month only. She could help us with the vote and share thoughts about Sustain IU's role. Just another thought.
So I think with that in mind, given that there are at least 2 council vacancies that will be filled hopefully imminently, we'll hold off on a vote for this at this point in time. And at the point that we're voting, given that we have a 2/3 majority, I will reflect the discussion of the change in the amendment section to reflect the other changes. And then we'll plan on holding officer elections next month. So with that in mind, if you scroll up in the bylaws, there's actually some definitions, especially for those who have not been on the commission before, of what the positions are. Chairperson works on preparation of the agenda and works with me on that. So we need to make sure that it's posted for at least 48 hours in advance, ideally 3 days in advance, which gives the public an opportunity to see what the commission is discussing. Co-chair, sometimes been vice chair, steps in if the chairperson is not present and runs the meeting. So right now, Naisha is filling that role since our chairperson has resigned. And then we also have a secretary and a treasurer. So secretary just makes sure that we have minutes written and sends those for approval at each meeting. And then treasurer is a nominal but required role. The commission doesn't have a ton of funding sources, but if that is a situation that arises, we need to have a treasurer. So next time we will have nominations for filling these positions. If you are interested in filling them, that would be something that I'd like to ask you to reflect on between now and the next meeting so that we can make sure that all the positions are filled at that point in time. And if you have any questions or concerns about any of those roles or duties, feel free to reach out to me between now and our March meeting. So I don't think we need to spend too much more time on this, but eventually we will amend our bylaws. I would like to at the next meeting also discuss the annual sustainability assessment There was a section in the organizational assessment about what that might look like moving forward. It doesn't need to be an arduous process, but it helps ensure that this commission is in communication with the full council and the mayor's office about their activities for the year. So something that could reflect in the next year is, a summary of the town hall that's planned or any other events that the commission's holding, as well as other things that the commission's been up to, especially in advocating for in 2022. So I will stop sharing the screen, and unless anyone has any other discussion, we can move to the next point in the agenda.
Thanks, Lauren.
Yep.
So it sounded like on the matter of whether or not to also amend that second area that Joseph pointed out, it sounds like we're leaning towards adding that to the amendment as well. Is that right, Councilmember Flaherty? I think
it seemed consistent with the rest of the edits. So.
To make it consistent with
that.
everything else. Yeah. I personally, as much as I like agile systems, I like participatory democracy more. And so I personally would choose to keep it as stringent as possible when it comes to changing bylaws. So I think that's consistent with what everyone else is saying, if I understand it correctly. Okay, so moving on, any other comments on that topic before we move on? Moving on then to reports from commissioners. Would either Colin or Alicia, who I think Alicia left maybe, would Colin like to speak to the Just Transition event?
Alicia's still here, but I'm happy to get us
Oh, okay.
started on this.
Yeah, she just wasn't in my view, I guess.
No worries. So we are, pretty on schedule with our outreach phase for the Just Transition event. I did want to check in with a few things on the flyers and in regard to the number of registrations we've gotten, Lauren, but I guess just to brief everybody, we've sent out the initial email blasts to all of our stakeholders. I have added a few more commissions to the list, and so I'm wondering if maybe we can send the blast out to them as well, but we can think about that later as the Just Transition working group. So we have yet to sort of, I guess I shouldn't say that. Next up in the outreach plan is we've got to begin doing social media. We're going to do some in-person paper flyering, I think Najla and I, and then we're going to create a sort of follow-up email pitch to kind of follow up with those who got the initial email blast and try and confirm their attendance. So yeah, I don't know, I'm very excited for the event. And I guess maybe, Lauren, did you have a sense of sort of how many registrations we have, if you've been able to check?
Yeah, so I checked, there's 14 people registered at this point in time. And that's just after an initial email. There was a little bit of a issue with the link, so I've been following up with anyone that didn't receive. I used a URL shortener and it didn't work very well. So on the city calendar, there's the full registration link. Basically, it goes to a Zoom page and people can determine whether they're attending in person or virtually. It gives people the option, especially if they are uncomfortable attending due to COVID in person in the auditorium, the option to attend virtually. So 14 registrations with that. Colin, I'm happy to sync with you about picking up the flyers when it works for either you or Najla. And the other thing that I do want to mention is that we'll have another work session with the consultants who will be presenting at the event on the 18th of February, which is a Friday, but they are on the West Coast, so that's when they're available. And so we'll basically do a run through with them to talk about run of show, and any other logistics in terms of the town hall. For those also that I did want to back up 1 second, this event is in coordination with Environmental Justice Solutions, and they are 2 individuals that are coming to present in terms of their work in Oakland to create a racial equity assessment tool for their community. So a portion of the event will be a discussion with them about how that was helpful to their community and how it might be applied in Bloomington, and then an open town hall with anyone that's attending in terms of questions and concerns about equitable transition due to climate change. So the Facebook event is up, working on getting on the city calendar, and then I can work with you all to get additional emails out and get more people registered over the course of the next few months, or not weeks really, but we've got about 6 weeks.
Perfect. And wondering, did commissioners receive this invitation by chance?
I will forward it to those that may not have received it. I also put the registration link in the chat as well, if you are available on March 16th from 6 to 8. And I will forward it to anyone that hasn't received it yet.
Perfect. Much appreciated, Lauren. Alicia, Nejla, any thoughts? Anything to add?
Yeah, thanks. I would just add that if anyone wants an excuse to run around downtown in campus putting up flyers, now's your chance. Let me and Colin know you would like to join the flyering squad of BCause.
I'd also add, I think the auditorium has space for, I believe, 70 people. So obviously we have a lot of space to fill. So if anybody has more ideas about who to invite, that would be great.
I guess do any other commissioners?
Sorry, we did decide on the auditorium at the public library. Is that right?
Yeah, it seats 140, so that will allow for 1 seat in between each person. I mean, it's obviously difficult to predict where we'll be with COVID, but that seems prudent. So
perfect. Go ahead, Colin.
I guess do any other commission? Sure. Sorry for interrupting. I was wondering, other commissioners, does this excite you? Do you think you might want to attend on the 16th? This meeting? And yeah, I'd be curious, putting you on the
yeah, Colin faded it out for me. Yeah, but yeah, I plan to attend. We actually remarkably don't have a council meeting that night, and I'll share this in my council report in maybe the meeting prior, or maybe the 2 meetings prior, just to get it on folks' radar who watch council meetings as well.
And I'm also
we'll try to put a flyer up over there too at City Hall.
That'd be great. I'm also going to try to reach out to CATS and see if they're available to try to broadcast it as well.
Thanks. That's a great idea.
Agreed.
I just had a question. You answered it with where the location was for in-person, but I clicked on the link and it doesn't say it on there. It's probably elsewhere, but if that can be clear for people who want to attend in person.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Nolan, for catching that. Okay, anything else to add, Colin, on that subject?
Nothing from me.
Or
Thanks.
Alicia? Okay, moving on to new business. Would our new commissioners like to share a brief introduction with the commission on possibly your background or interest or items that are issues that are very important to you?
I'll go first. My name is David Maynard. I'm a project manager currently working with the city of Durham, North Carolina. very, very remotely. I'm actually on one of the broadband equity programs where we're installing high-speed fiber for low-income and underserved communities. So Colin's call to the White House infrastructure bill was very interesting for me. I plan on using that in the future, and I think actually we're going to be doing some other projects still in Durham under that bill. So that's exciting. I've only been in the state of Indiana for about 5 months. Yeah, so I'm still kind of gaining my footing around the area, and yeah, I'm glad I got to join you all. I wanted to be involved in the community, and it sounds like you guys are doing really good work here. So thanks.
Welcome, and thank you for that introduction.
I guess
Emma?
it's my turn. Hi guys, my name's Emma Ferguson. I'm from here, Bloomington, Indiana, born and raised. Went to Bloomington High School North. I then went to Ball State University. I got my bachelor's in business administration with a minor in marketing. I then went straight into my MBA program, which I finished in September of 2020. So that was interesting. I now work at Ivy Tech in the foundation office, as assistant director of development. So I do donor relations, alumni relations, get to work with students sometimes. So I really enjoy that. And yeah, happy to be here, happy to help and contribute as much as I can. So thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, Emma, and welcome. And I put in the chat, I got my MBA at Ball State. And I also worked for 5 years at Ivy Tech. I taught business there. So I hold Ivy Tech in very high regard in the people there. So welcome. And I'm glad you're on board with us.
Great. Thanks. Yeah. I think I briefly remember, I don't know if we met, but I remember your name. You have a very distinct name. And so
that's good.
I don't know if we ever directly met, but because I interviewed
here, I hope
summers ago as well. So, but happy to be here. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Okay. And then it looks like we do have time to discuss. Lauren, did you want to lead that discussion, or Councilmember Flaherty on the report that was done recommending the merger of our two commissions?
Yeah, I think this is a multi-meeting conversation, but I did want to bring it up since there was a recent press release. As Matt mentioned, there has been an organizational assessment, and this isn't just for the commissions. Been doing organizational assessment of each department just to ensure that city government is working as effectively as possible. The report, which I sent to you, I would point to just a couple of aspects of it that pertain most to this commission. One was just a discussion that there is some overlap between the purviews of various commissions, and this isn't only between sustainability and environmental commission, but in terms of a couple of other commissions. There's several different transportation related commissions and several different park related commissions. And so the recommendation of the report was to consider a merger between Environmental Commission and Bloomington Commission on Sustainability, and as well as considering mergers for some of the transportation related commissions and some of the parks related commissions. In terms of next steps, I will be following up with council and the mayor's office to see what that looks like. Nothing will happen between now and the next meeting, but I did think it was important to mention because when there are several different bodies of commissioners that work on similar issues, like the report pointed out, it can be confusing sometimes for the public to figure out where to address their concerns or which meetings to attend to. if they would like to bring something to a commission. So I think it's just a broader discussion. The Environmental Commission was created quite a few years, decades in advance of the Sustainability Commission. I do think that there are slightly different focuses, but at the same time, practically speaking, they both have quite a few seats and similar focuses and interests. So after I follow up on the findings of the report and next steps, I'll keep you guys posted as to what that looks like. But just wanted to see if it give you a heads up and let you know that that was done recently and was a press release. So
I have a question. Is now a good time for questions?
yeah, sure.
Will BCAS be involved in the decisions regarding the follow-up of these recommendations, and how will BCAS be included in those decisions?
That's what I wanted to figure out in terms of process and what the next steps are for the other recommendations are as well. And I can give you an update on that next meeting. I was just wondering what your general thoughts were, and I'm happy to pass those on when I do my follow-up in the next couple of weeks.
Joseph, your hand is up. Did you want to give a comment on that topic?
Thank you. I actually also have a question, and that is if there's an idea of an even very rough timeline on when these types of decisions will be made or when changes are likely to happen, if it's months or years.
I don't have a rough timeline. So this was just presented to council very recently and released last week. So that's part of what I was following up on. But I did think it was important to bring to your attention so that you knew it had occurred and it wasn't a surprise. I think there's been conversations about this for quite some time because functionally the commission's focus on similar advocacy pieces. And so is helpful, I think, in the long term to think about whether from a strategic perspective, it's helpful to have both or a certain number of seats on one or what that looks like. Because of the type of a commission it is, it's an advisory commission and not statutorily required. It's kind of up to each municipality to figure out which commissions it would like to continue. And I think that over time, BCAS's function has responded to the needs of the year. And so at times that's meant more data gathering. At other times it's meant more community engagement. It's obviously been a very strange last 2 years, but I will let you know what that looks like. And there was a section in there, and this was just an idea. I mean, one recommendation of the report was to consider merging the two, and then over time, sort of as terms ended, settling out at a certain number of seats. If you've looked at the Environmental Commission, it has quite a few seats as well. I think like 12 or something. So that would look like, it would look a little bit different for a merger between those two commissions versus some of the other ones that have different numbers of seats or different bylaws.
Got it. Thank you. And thanks for bringing it to our attention.
Matt.
Thanks. Yeah, I would just encourage commissioners to read, if not the whole report, at least the executive summary and the recommendation on BCAS and the Environmental Commission, and maybe revisit the sections of Bloomington Municipal Code that created those commissions. So let me see if I can drop a link here relatively quickly. So you can kind of see their purview and that context. I think I haven't decided how I feel about merging them or not. I think, some good points are made in the report. I do think it mistakes a little bit the idea that BCAS and Environmental Commission are largely the same thing. I don't really think that's the case. although I will say that the purview of sustainability writ large is so all encompassing that it's at times hard for the commission to focus. And I guess I would encourage folks to think about different models of what clarifying separate lanes could look like if the commissions remain separate, or how they could combine in an effective way. Like I wonder, about designated committees of the commission, or working groups, whatever you want to call it, for social, economic, and environmental sustainability, for instance, and the previous purview of the Environmental Commission being folded into a designated 4 or 5 member group that's focused on environmental sustainability issues, while other people focus on other types of sustainability issues. Or there's probably other possibilities too. I think it's just worth thinking about that. I can say as a council member, I would very much like to hear from as many BCOS and EC members as possible about their thoughts, both about whether or not the commissions should be combined, as well as, again, how that could be done effectively. If so, like Lauren, I don't know what that process will look like yet. I hope it's collaborative between the administration and council. That doesn't always happen. But hopefully it is. But ultimately will lead to the development of some sort of legislation. I would think this year to amend Title II, which is where all the boards and commissions are housed. So I'll, as I stop talking here, I'll drop a link to the Bloomington Municipal Code in chat and see if I can quickly identify the references for those 2 commissions.
David?
Yeah, I was just wondering, I'm looking at the boards and commissions listings. Is there any way that to be a way of having sustainability listed as a topic? Because as you said, it is wholly all-inclusive, and much of it goes outside the realms of environment altogether. Where would it be best to change that if instead of merging environment, sustainability, actually making sustainability a category of its own?
So I think Matt's putting the code in the chat. So since Bloomington Commission on Sustainability was formed, I think in like 2004, roughly, there haven't been any code amendments. One possible outcome of this process would be just clarifying the purviews of each. One thing that is noted in the assessment is that it sort of conflates both commissions as being wholly related to the environment. I do think that, for instance, when Don gave his report earlier, the EC is working on a lot of great things in regards to like habitat corridor and other important aspects. And some of the things that this commission is working on skew more towards social and other equity issues. And they're both, I think, mutually reinforcing. I think it's a great conversation to have after a commission has been present for a series of years as to how it's working. And part of that's just, I think, improving communication about what the purpose and the activities of each commission are over time. So nothing is sort of like out of the question, but there would need to be a legislative process undergone in either case. So it's not going to just happen, without participation with council.
Joseph?
David, did that answer your question? I saw you're still unmuted. I thought I'd let you respond if you wanted to.
I was just going to say, if there's a way to kind of ride the coattails of the UN's goals for sustainability, and have that maybe add some credibility to explaining the wide range of goals and topics that sustainability involves. But like you said, I'm sure that it has to go through legislative process to get kind of cut into its own groove. So yeah, I just like you said, maybe over time we can get in there.
Yeah, I'm also a fan of the SDGs, David. Thanks for that. Joseph, you had another question?
Yeah, actually, I wanted to comment on Matt's query for information from members about the potential for these two things. And my knee-jerk reaction is that I admittedly don't know enough about the Environmental Council or Commission since I'm involved in this one, and we'll research into that. But to me, they seem like two very distinct things, and it does seem like maybe a kind of a gross overgeneralization to say that both things are all environmental related and that they're the same thing. Yeah, I think that at the very least, if they don't merge, having clear definition in the code, as you mentioned, Lauren, would be an excellent outcome as well, because that was even something we had discussed in our previous meeting, which I know you didn't attend, Lauren, but just sort of the lack of precision in the definition of what the Commission on Sustainability is called to do. So I think it would be great that if it is preserved, that it be given greater specificity to help guide that direction and make sure that it's not overlapping if there is significant overlap with the Environmental Commission.
Thank you, Joseph. I've thought about this a little bit today, and my main concern would simply be that by merging the two commissions, there would be only one commission and half as many people considering these very important issues. And so I think that's something that really doesn't seem to be mentioned or addressed in the report, or how, I think important these issues are. They possibly warrant two commissions. Maybe we should have more than two commissions. And if the main concern is that it's confusing to the public, then obviously, like you've all said, that can be addressed in other ways than by merging the commissions. So thanks. Does anyone have anything else to share, Matt?
Yeah, I'll just note that I think there are real concerns around filling commissions over time, and as well as staffing them, and the amount of time that takes from city staff as well as clerk staff and council members. It's we at times have difficulty keeping commissions filled, and that might be reflective of a lot of things, but among those might just be that we're kind of really tapping the resource of human power in Bloomington that's willing to volunteer their time the way you all are, for a commission like this. So I think there are real and valid considerations to the possibility that we're overextended as a city in that regard. So I didn't want to give that short shrift, and encourage you to again kind of try to take the overall recommendations in context of the report in looking at the specific BCC recommendation too, because I think there's some good points in it for sure. Thanks
for that, Council Member Flaherty. Colin, did you have anything to add?
So I've given this some thought as well. I tend to agree with Matt about this issue of resources, and I do think that that's valid. And I don't think that it's coming from a place of austerity, I really don't. I do think that there's a way to reconcile. So I would say that initially, at least, I'm still working on this, but initially I do kind of agree with the rationale for merging the two commissions, because I do see environmental protection and sustainability as fitting under the umbrella of addressing the climate and ecological crisis that we are is getting way worse year after passing year. And so, for example, the Congress has a special committee on the climate crisis, where they have charged themselves in that committee with doing hearings, investigations, and figuring out policy responses to that crisis. So I could see, a potential new commission as being oriented sort of practically around addressing the climate and ecological crisis, but also dealing with sustainability, right? Sustainability could be under its purview. Environmental protection would be under its purview, because in order to address the climate and ecological crisis, we have to regenerate ecosystems. We have to reduce pollution, And so I do really see them as all interconnected. And I think there's some really good scholarly work that's been done that's pretty cutting edge that kind of breaks down this notion of environment versus humanity. But I'm going to share that also in a future email with you all, because I think it could be useful for us. All of that said, I do agree that we should probably proceed carefully with sort of, the getting behind a merger or not, if that makes sense.
Thanks, Colin. And yeah, I would also bring attention back to David's comment about the SDGs. We don't necessarily in our city need to reinvent what sustainability is, right? We can take guidance from other sources as well. Thanks everyone for your comments on that topic. Does anyone else want to share their initial views on that? Okay, is there any other new business? Joseph?
Yeah, thank you, Najla. I was thinking about bringing back up the conversation from last month's meeting about BCO's engagement with the Climate Action Plan, but I'm wondering if a pending change to the structure of the commission warrants perhaps delaying that conversation. I wonder if Matt or Lauren, you have any insight on the value of devoting more time to the focus of the Commission on Sustainability relative to the potential for these changes.
I think it would be helpful if between this meeting and the next Climate Action Committee meeting, if anyone can confirm whether they're able to attend. I think over time it would be helpful to have a connection between this commission and the work of the Climate Action Committee in terms of helping inform and track climate action plan implementation and how that's communicated. So I think that would be the initial first step, since that meeting is in 10 days, roughly 10 days. And once the meeting notices about that I can share that with everyone else. In terms of medium-term steps, I will keep everyone engaged about how this topic may affect that. I think that regardless of the structure of either commission, anyone that is present on either commission can play a role in helping inform engagement on climate action plan implementation, since it's so broad and affects every aspect of what both commissions do. So there's sort of the practical side of that, which is it would be helpful to have a consistent liaison from this commission to the committee if possible. And if that's not possible in a given month because of scheduling conflicts, I will be present at both. And then in the longer term, working on maybe having a separate working group on CAP engagement would be helpful, especially as we gain new members and have more membership that can support a new working group.
Thank you. And I put that meeting on my calendar, on the 22nd, and hopefully as many BCAUS members as can attend that will attend that. And maybe we can then figure out, like you mentioned, a regular liaison for that meeting. Okay.
I also agree with what Colin said in the chat. I think right now I'm kind of at capacity with the just transition stuff, but I think maybe once that is less busy, then I could probably be on some sort of CAP implementation working group. That sounds good to me.
Colin, did you have anything else to add? Your hand is still up.
No, sorry.
And then just to reiterate that we are going to be taking officer elections, or not elections, officer vote. We're going to be electing new officers in March. And so everyone should please consider running for one of the offices. it is a wonderful way to serve the commission if you have the time and ability to do that. And does anyone have anything else to add before we adjourn? If not, then I will take a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
Any objections? Okay, thanks, everyone. Have a nice night. Bye.
Thanks a lot.